It was fun. I love this sport. I gave it my all. It's fucking crazy. I had a blast, and thank you to all the fans and everyone.
All right, folks, it's over. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul in the 6th round of their fight on Netflix.
Style that would align with a ring that size, a negative style, as we mentioned. It really comes down to the fan interest. Jake Paul is on a 2-fight stretch coming into this one, which really put his reputation on the line.
Boxing insiders react as Jake Paul's exit comes after his stunning knockout defeat to Anthony Joshua. Jake has suggested that when he fulfills all his dreams in boxing, he intends to step away and chase a future in the NFL, hinting at a turn in his story.
Fell after this. Like legitimately just to play like safety and just deck people. No, I swear to God, I'm about to bring hella ratings to whatever team I'm on.
Where would you want to go if you can go to any team?
Shit, the Browns.
So
I can run a 4.34.
He's the fastest man on the planet.
I got hands. I have the size, the power. I can knock people out with one punch. So why can't I play free safety?
Do you think you coming into the NFL would be the equivalent of like when an NFL player says, I'm going to try to box now?
No, because I played football my whole life. At the end of the day, it's coverage, knowing your plays, and then...
The boxing world reacts intensely to the fight as ex-user IB speaks after the stunning knockout, delivering a fiery view on Jake Paul's future in boxing by posting, Jake Paul knocked out. His career is over. This bum is done. Duke McKenzie reacts to the latest fight, explaining how undersized Jake Paul looked against Anthony Joshua. He reveals that even when Jake attempted to throw punches, he couldn't reach AJ cleanly, exposing the clear mismatch. McKenzie firmly warns that Jake must end this madness now, because continuing in fights like this could be dangerous and permanently damage his boxing legacy.
To throw a shot, he would lunge in, jump in, and because he was so short, he'd miss. And then he ended up stumbling over his feet and falling over. Sometimes in that fight, he reminded me of, have you seen that Kung Fu film called The Drunken Master? Except for he wasn't a master. As a Kung Fu guy who walks around and normally kicks people's ass, but he looks drunk all the time. That's what that fight reminded me of. It was such a poor showing from Jake Paul. You know, I mean, it's a well-documented fact. There was a lot of money on the line. And I'm sure you, Max, as I would, and anybody else in the street would fight Anthony Joshua for 75 million. You just would. And the same thing would happen. And even after the fight, now the fight's over, you're 75 million.
Another ex-user, Chelsea, reacts emotionally to Jake Paul's shocking loss, expressing raw honesty and relief by posting, I hardly come here anymore, but I'm so glad Jake Paul lost. Maybe now he'll shut the up. Former UFC champion Michael Bisping responds to Jake Paul's brutal defeat at the hands of Anthony Joshua, calling it a complete masterclass. He breaks down how badly Jake was hurt, explaining that AJ's crushing uppercuts and sharp combinations gave Paul nowhere to move. Even as Jake tried to escape by running, the punishment kept finding him. Bisping stresses that the damage to Jake's face and overall condition was serious, making it clear he must rest and fully recover before even thinking about future fights. The bout ultimately revealed Jake's clear limits when facing true top-tier opponents.
In my humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? A lot of the time, he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner, and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing. It's not MMA, as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round, he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, and a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
Ex-user Cabral's Finest reacts to Jake Paul's shocking injury, revealing the seriousness of the moment by posting, Jake Paul has gone to the hospital with a suspected broken jaw. Bro was forced into early retirement. Sean Jones delivers his reaction to the brutal clash between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, stressing that at least this fight wasn't rigged or scripted. He points out that even with Jake suffering a broken jaw, AJ never unleashed his full power, hinting the knockout could have been far worse. Jones underlines how severe the injury truly was while giving respect to the fight's authenticity. He believes Jake faced a real test, and that this bout exposed the unforgiving reality of stepping up against a world-class boxer like Joshua, making the injury feel even more alarming.
Those people who were fully convinced that this fight was 100% rigged. Like, people said that this is a clown show, and they said, this is rigged, this is scripted. Okay, so now Joshua's won. What are you going to say to that? So was it scripted that Joshua was going to win? You see this whole narrative about, oh, the fight's rigged, the fight's scripted. That's illegal to do, and Joshua is not going to tarnish his legacy by doing something like that. Would Jake Paul do something like that? Maybe so, yeah, but not someone like Joshua. Come on. Now, to be fair, 80% of that fight was looking a little bit dodgy. It was looking like Joshua wasn't throwing as much as he usually would. Jake Paul was landing on Joshua. He landed a really strong jab that knocked Joshua's head back. He landed a couple of decent overhand rights. In fact, Jake was kind of the first one who landed the biggest shots of the fight. But this is the thing, anyone who fights, even on like a low-level basis, or who just does some sparring, will understand that when you fight someone who has got nowhere near the skill level as you, sometimes it can be a little bit harder because they're awkward, they're doing stuff that you don't really expect. You know, sometimes when you fight beginners, it's a bloody nightmare. Just like, you know, awkward movements. You're like, what are they throwing? You don't expect certain shots to come that do come. And then you fight someone who's a little bit more traditionally sound with the fundamentals, and it's almost a little bit easier. And I think that's what we've seen here in this fight. AJ has had an easier time with some fighters who've got like 40 professional fights with 20 KOs on the record than he did with Jake Paul. Why is that? Oh, because it's scripted. It's scripted. No, it's not scripted. It's just because Jake Paul is awkward and he's a beginner in relation to Joshua. So Joshua just took some time to figure them out. You could see Joshua was getting a little bit frustrated in that 4th and 5th round, but then he started.
User Mir71 delivers a blunt warning to Jake Paul after the loss, urging him to walk away from the sport by posting, "Do everyone a favor and don't return." Real boxing fans sound fed up. Analyst Liam Goff cautions that Jake Paul is facing serious danger following his brutal defeat to Anthony Joshua. Goff explains that the paths forward in Jake's boxing career are essentially shut down for now, as he's dealing with severe injuries that demand long recovery time. A broken jaw combined with other physical damage means Jake has no choice but to step back and focus fully on healing. Goff makes it clear that until Jake is completely recovered, any plans of continuing to fight are paused. The analyst underscores that this window is critical for Jake's long-term health and future in professional sports, making the situation especially alarming.
Guy who was, 5-6 inches shorter than him and probably 60-70 pounds lighter, right? So he was probably looking at that thinking, yeah, you're a legit boxer, yeah, you hit very hard, but look how much bigger I am to you. Contrast that to him looking up at Anthony Joshua and realizing, oh my God, look at the size of you in comparison to me. That's a bit different. And I think with Jake Paul, it really dawned on him what's going on. But Jake Paul has to keep face. He has to stay essentially in that persona that, you know, I am the man, I'm going to win this, trying to sell a dream to a casual, a bit like what Eddie Hearn does, trying to sell the casual audience that this is going to be a real fight, quote unquote. It was a real fight. It's not scripted, but you know what I mean, that he's really in this fight. That's what he was trying to do. And he did that well up until fight night. Boy, did he fail miserably on fight night. Again, I give him credit. He doesn't need to box. He can choose an easier profession, as I say. But to go in and to run around the ring like that, that was something else entirely. I mean, he was doing his best Roadrunner impression in there. He was running around that ring from the minute that bell went. That was all he was trying to do. And listen, AJ's performance, I can critique it from a defensive point of view, that he got hit with some silly shots that he probably shouldn't have been hit with. He was trying to cut the ring off in a ring as big as that. It's not easy. All right? And furthermore, if you're in there with an opponent who purely purely just wants to survive. He's no interest in winning the fight. He just wants to go the rounds. People, you could be one of the most hyper, you could be a prime Mike Tyson, Bone Crusher Smith, prime example. People never talk about that fight with Mike Tyson because they say, oh yeah, prime.
After taking serious damage in his latest fight, Jake Paul turns to X to update fans on his recovery and where he stands now, mixing gratitude with the reality of what lies ahead. He writes, "Just got out of surgery. Everything went smoothly. Thanks for all the love. Lots of pain and stiffness. Got to eat liquids for 7 days. So to the amazing team at Miami University Hospital, everyone was so gracious and caring." Wade reacts to Jake Paul's recent bout, pointing out that while Jake may have felt he had already accomplished everything, part of that mindset comes from not having to defend multiple belts and being free to chase big money fights next year. Wade floats possible matchups with stars like Canelo, or even a quieter year for Jake, before noting that a massive showdown with Tyson Fury could still be waiting if Jake truly commits. He warns, however, that Jake was nowhere close to AJ's level in skill, size, power, speed, or stamina, while still giving him credit for stepping into the ring. Wade also touches on the social media frenzy, praising Jake for daring to take on such a high-level challenge despite the predictable result, ultimately calling the entire event a thrilling spectacle for boxing fans.
And I don't think he fights a ton in 2026. I think it'll be a very slow year for him. Look for those two guys as the main two he would fight. I wish it was Tommy Fury, but I doubt it. On the other side, I want to see him get back into boxing specifically, get back into committing to this, because there is a massive, massive fight that awaits him in Tyson Fury. It's far past time that it happened. If they don't do it now, they never will. And yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say on this fight. As far as, what happened in there tonight, I know on Twitter people are going to want their money back, or they're going to call it a bad fight or a sloppy fight or whatever, and then there's going to be people, celebrating Jake's downfall. That was always going to be the case. Of course, the first time he gets rocked, dropped, and stopped, people are going to celebrate like it's the 4th of July, or it's their birthday, or like it's Christmas. So yeah, expect that, but I won't do that here. I won't, because I respect the hell out of him for going and doing it, and there's not any normal people on earth that would have done it. I don't care if you say, oh, for...
Another ex-user, Zane, reacts to the shocking news of Jake Paul's injury, voicing disbelief and deep concern about how serious it is, posting, "Jake Paul announces he has a double jaw broken, snapped, and may never be able to fight again. AJ broke Jake Paul's jaw. Anthony Joshua did him dirty. It's brutal." Jake Paul's latest loss to Anthony Joshua has left him dealing with a devastating injury, as reports confirm his jaw is broken. The damage is severe enough to keep him out of boxing for at least a year. Medical experts and industry insiders explain that recovering from a double jaw break demands long rest, careful rehabilitation, and constant monitoring to avoid lasting complications, forcing Jake to put every fighting plan on pause. Fans and analysts are sharing their concern, reminding everyone that a fighter's health has to come first, especially after such a punishing defeat. Jake himself has posted updates on his condition, thanking his medical team while admitting the pain and restrictions during recovery. With a broken jaw, training or competing isn't safe. For now, everything centers on full healing. This injury places a heavy, unexpected pause on his boxing journey.
Anthony Joshua Jake Paul fight was going to be rigged. These x-rays definitely tell a different story. So on December 19th of 2025, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, Jake Paul fought the two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua at the Cassia Center in Miami, Florida, which was streamed exclusively on Netflix as part of a major boxing event that was promoted by Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The ending result was Anthony Joshua won by knockout in the 6th round after Jake Paul was knocked down 4 times in total. Twice in the 5th round and twice in the 6th round. Anthony Joshua landed 48 punches on Jake Paul compared to Jake Paul landing about 16 on Anthony Joshua. And this is the second professional loss of Jake Paul's fighting career, dropping his record down to 12-2. Now, Jake Paul ended up suffering a double broken jaw during the fight and was taken to the hospital afterward, skipping the post-fight press conference, probably because he probably couldn't talk. But in his in-ring interview, he said, "That was crazy. I had a blast. I think my jaw is broke." Anyway, as far as his professional fighting career is concerned, as of December 20th of 2025, he doesn't have any new opponents that have been announced, and it's expected that his jaw injury is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Regardless of how you feel about him, That dude fought a 2-time heavyweight champion and survived. And I think we can all agree that regardless of how you feel, that takes...
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaquille Majuri step onto CBS Sports to unpack Jake Paul's latest fight, peeling back the layers of his strategy and what really happened in the ring. They point out how Paul leaned heavily on survival, staying elusive, constantly on the move, refusing to be trapped in corners, a choice that helped him last longer than many expected. But that same approach raises a bigger question. How can he seriously chase a cruiserweight title without standing his ground and engaging elite fighters head-on? Campbell, speaking for Missouri, suggests that Jake's star power, not just his boxing ability, may be what keeps his career alive, highlighting money-driven matchups like KSI or even a Tommy Fury rematch as the real opportunities ahead. Together, they note that Jake's defensive mindset, evasive tactics, and preference for a massive 22 FFT ring reveal something deeper, that right now, spectacle and fan interest seem to matter more than true competitive ambition.
In the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model. Right now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to what we did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there. There's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to...
That's it for today's video. Stay locked. Until next.